I think a discovery of the true meaning of the Hebrew language can play a significant role in helping Methodists and Christians in general in rediscovering the essential meaning of the Bible, or Torah as I call it, and then bringing those teachings in new ways to people who, in my view, are thirsty for it, very thirsty. So how do we feed that thirst? One way is to understand what the Torah really says, which is to understand what the Hebrew really means. Truth, in Hebrew, the word ayin mem tav, is the first, middle, and last letter of the alphabet. It means what is truth is that which includes the most. It can speak more deeply across time and space to the ultimate meaning of what it means to be human. An important way of getting to this deeper understanding is through an understanding of the meaning of the word God. There is no word for God. In Hebrew, there are various names of God, but the generic word God is not used. The traditional people say Hashem, or the name. There's a saying I've heard, maybe you've heard it. What X says about Y tells you more about X than it does about Y. What we say about God is telling about who we are. When I see people, or hear people pronouncing God's unpronounceable name, I know something about them. I know when people use certain names of God, I know something about them. So the name of God that we use is a profound expression of who we are. Now, sometimes we don't know God's names, or we know only inadequately, so we're using God's names in a way that can't express him or her, because God is also beyond any gender and things like that. So it's the names of God we use are a big expression, or a profound expression, of how we experience God and how God experiences us. Of the main names for God that are used in the Torah, there are three that are particularly relevant to this quest at its earliest stage. The first is Adonai, which is not pronounced because the words are too powerful, but this name of God was said only once a year in the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Jerusalem by the high priest. It's a totally sacred name. There's Elohim, which is God as cause and effect, God as gravity, God as nature. And then there's El Shaddai, which means the God who is sufficient, the God who has power and force. Every line of the Torah has to be understood in the light of the name of God that is used in that sentence. And how is it used to understand the deeper meaning of God as it is expressed in that sentence? So the word Adonai, which is the most common name, is the eternal name of God. It's also the unknowable name of God. So the question is, how can we ascertain the meaning of a God who is ultimately unknowable? That's the key. That he or she or it is unknowable. No pronoun can define God either. But if we start out with the understanding that the deepest levels of the Creator, which is a word we can use because it indicates the function, is unknowable, it gives us an essential humility which is crucial to understanding the meaning of Torah. There's a famous phrase, Reshit Chachma Yirat Adonai. It's a Hebrew phrase used in a lot of prayers. Reshit goes back to the first word of the Torah, Bereshit. Chachma is wisdom. Yirat Adonai is humility. That's usually translated as meaning the essence of wisdom is humility before God. So if ultimately God is unknowable, the way to approach Torah and its meaning is with humility, meaning we can't know and we don't know its ultimate meaning. This means that other meanings are possible. Other people's meanings can be understood as being part of our meanings. We say in the Torah world, God is one. That's been widely misunderstood as so-called one God, a monotheism. It's not monotheism as been interpreted in the Western way of thinking. It means that God is one. God is a unity. God is the capacity to bring seemingly opposites together. Past, present, and future are unified in God. Here and there are unified in God. You and I are unified in God. Everything is unified, and it's unified in the Creator God, the unknowable, unpronounceable name, which is also the most powerful name. And that name, lying behind all other names, gives us the capacity to see everything that the Torah teaches in the light of its unknowability. So if we have the idea that we're approaching the meaning of Torah with ultimate humility, we can look at other points of view, including those that differ from us, and go deeper and deeper into them through understanding of God's names. So the name is important, crucial. It's an entrance point into a relationship with the unknowable. Remember, we talk about a name to something which ultimately we don't know, but that's what helps us. Through Adonai, through the so-called Tetragrammaton, we're given a entrance point into the deeper meanings of what it means to be alive and human in this existence, and how to transform that existence through a relationship with the name of God. The second name, which is often used in the same sentence as Yod Kei Vav Kei or Adonai, is Elohim. Elohim is God as nature. Elohim is also God of cause and effect. Elohim is the God of justice. Adonai is often understood as love. One of the phrases or concepts we can use for this unknowable name of God is love. When Jesus said that God is love, he was saying Torah. So love becomes God's name. Love is the expression of God's most profound name. So God is love, but love is not God, because God is larger than any name. So God is love is then often juxtaposed in the Torah with God as nature, or Elohim, which is justice or cause and effect, and so on. So Elohim is the name of God that has results. Actions have consequences. It's the name of God that causes things to happen. It's the name of God that allows this universe to exist. El Shaddai means El means God's power. Shaddai means that which is sufficient. So El Shaddai represents the nature of God who allows us to exist. El Shaddai, the God who is sufficient. Without that, we couldn't even be. So the fact that we walk around on this planet is the force of El Shaddai, which is a subset of Elohim. Then there's Adonai Tzevaos. That is the deeper name of God. But Tzevaos means hosts or angelic hosts. This is the name of the Creator God, the unknowable God, who manifests itself in all kinds of things in the world at different levels. This level of God is a level at which all things exist. Without this level, nothing could exist. So this level of God, Adonai, is manifest as Adonai Tzevaos, which means that everything in the created world has within itself an aspect of the Creator God and could not exist without it. God is the ultimate source from which all things find their meaning and purpose. And we were reminded in Jesus' teachings that the way this understanding is, we call this God love. Almost all the times when God is talked about, and it talks about God manifesting itself, it gives us different aspects of God's function in the world, depending on the circumstances. So we have, as human beings, a capacity to call upon the different aspects of God as we need them. So we say when we're feeling guilty and we feel we have not lived appropriately, we call upon the God who is in Hebrew, Erech Apayim, slow to anger, and of a Rav Chesed, and full of love. So we have the capacity to call upon those aspects of God according to the circumstances in which we are living and which we need God. God is so encompassing that there's always going to be an aspect of God that can speak to our nature. And since there are different levels, we can go to the deeper and deeper levels and get to a deeper and deeper understanding of the function that that aspect of God can have in our lives. We have the opportunity, because we're human and created to make choices, to make the choices which bring us closer to our Creator, to the unknowable source, and find that aspect of the Creator which can transform and elevate and profoundly change our lives and our behavior. Because we manifest the different, as you would call the different names of God, we are changing who we are because we're experiencing a different aspect of God as is needed. A poem says that everybody has a name. One is the name we earn, one is given to us by our parents. But I would add another thing. Each of us has a name which is given to us at birth, an essence, an aspect of God's name. As we discover the name of God that is within us, then we become more of who we were meant to be.